The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences. I know we're usually talking about kids' cartoons and stuff, but there's going to be naughty language. Anyway, listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, your weekly home for animation reviews and discussions.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. I'm your host, JD, and with me is my best bro in the whole dang universe, Mr. Kyle.
Yo.
I always call you Mr. Kyle. It seems so formal.
Man, I'm older than you.
It's true. Kyle's my senpai. If you're like most of America, you probably went and saw Avengers Infinity War this weekend. I did. Kyle didn't, because he's not into these Marvel movies.
Nope. It's been 10 years and I don't give a mad fuck.
Whoa. I saw Infinity War and I liked it. Melanie didn't like it because it was sad, but, you know. But in honor of, Marvel reaching their big milestone, wrapping all the loose ends together movie, figured it'd be a good enough time to talk about what I could safely say is one of the best superhero shows to ever have graced television. Kyle, would you agree with that?
As far as, yeah, I would say so.
Alright, cool. This week we're going to be talking about the short-lived Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, the first season. Basically this show came out in 2010 and, was in the middle of like the phase 1 of the Marvel movies. I think this is around when like Thor came out. I think it was kind of strange. I mean, I definitely like that they did it, but I think it was kind of strange that they opted to do not a show that ties thematically in with the movies. They would eventually end up doing that. But this movie is this show is very like heavily comic influenced. I mean, right down to the art style and the costumes that everyone has on, and the storylines pulled right from the comics. It's Kyle. You're more into the actual comics rather than like the TV shows in the movies, right?
Somewhat.
So you're more up to knowledge of like what is and isn't going on in comic book world.
Pretty much, I would say.
Okay, so is that what? Because Kyle and I both really like this show. It came out around the same time that Spectacular Spider-Man was coming out, or I guess a little after.
I would say after.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if they were on at the same time. Which I also really like that show. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future thing. But Kyle, would you say that you like this show because it seems to stick so closely with the comics rather than the other media?
I mean, even putting that aside, I just like it because the art style is great. A lot of obscure bad guys that never get talked about or shown are in it. There's just a bunch of different things that I like about this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the art. I think the art style is what really drew me in originally. Because I mean, it's kind of a little generic in some points, but in others, it's like I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It just has a very interesting art style. I think even more so with like the backgrounds and stuff. There's a lot of like, I think very Jack Kirby inspired kind of design work that I noticed rewatching this first season. But I mean, getting into it, what I was saying along with this this show, instead of going with like a lineup that more closely follows the movies, this movie, I keep calling it a movie, this show opted to basically start off with the original, like from the original comics, the original lineup of Avengers. So I mean, you had Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Ant-Man, and Wasp, and that's all we had for the first couple of episodes. So I mean, I thought that was kind of a ballsy move to just like, nope, that's what we're going with, even though we haven't even introduced Ant-Man into the Marvel movie universe yet for a couple more years. I mean, Captain America, Black Panther, and Hawkeye eventually get introduced along with other heroes eventually. But,
Hawkeye and Black Widow were introduced super early, but they never joined the team.
Yeah, Hawkeye takes a few episodes before he actually joins the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which S.H.I.E.L.D. is, featured pretty predominantly in this show too. And you get Black Nick Fury, so that's cool. But I thought it was interesting that like for a while he's a combination of like old Nick Fury and new Nick Fury. So he's got like, he's black, but he has like the black and white hair as well. So it's kind of a good transitional mix. But so the season starts out kind of interestingly in the fact that like the first 5 episodes or so are all origin stories for all of the main lineup. So like Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and then Ant-Man and Wasp all get like their own episode to explain who they are, what they're about. But the way
call that an origin story.
Well, it's more of like an origin episode to kind of like get you introduced to the character. Like it's an episode solely focused on them before like they form up to become the Avengers. So I mean, kind of like how the Marvel movies decided like everyone gets their own movie before they all team up for the Avenger movie. But what was interesting, the way Disney decided to put this out was that they split each of those episodes up into like 5 or 6 different bits, and they would play them in between commercials every week. So you'd have to like keep watching and tuning in to catch each new part to the episode. Obviously, once the DVDs came out, and I think like during re-airings, you could watch the whole episode in its entirety. But I thought that was just kind of an interesting way to build up hype for your show by just interspersing it in between commercial breaks like that. Yeah. So Kyle, did you have like a particularly favorite episode of this season?
I didn't watch too much of it. I basically watched the first episode and then what started with it. And that was it. Probably around Captain America's origin.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that the first 6 episodes are pretty much connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that certain things like there's different characterizations, like the Hulk's not really, he's not boiled down to Hulk smash, he's kind of his own character, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah,
he has lines.
He can talk and is kind of intelligent a little bit, so it's not like he's just the mindless rage monster.
Oh, he's pretty smart. He can talk some mean shit. That's what I did like about him. He's calling Thor Goldilocks and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It did make me like him a lot more, but each episode is connected somewhat. They had Captain America and Thor somewhat connected in his own little episode.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the entire series kind of carries into in the next episode. We'll give bits and pieces to something that'll happen in the future. So, so basically, after the introduction episodes, there's a two-parter episode which basically sets up the whole premise for the show. Whereas, for some reason, all the supervillain prisons around the world seemingly malfunction, and then all the supervillains get out. And after facing one of the most powerful ones, all the different heroes decide, hey, we should team up and go hunt these villains down because Shield's doing a bad job of it, and that's how they become Avengers.
They fight Samurai Jack that was stuck in the past. As the first bad guy.
So yeah, there's a lot of different different subplots going around that kind of culminate at the end of the season, but even then it keeps carrying on to the second season. So I mean, you got all of these supervillains that are still running around, and the Avengers got to track them down and stuff, but you've also got Captain America's villain Baron Zemo makes his own basically Injustice League to fight the Avengers, like the anti-Avengers or whatever, and there's a whole reason for that. And then my favorite episode, I guess is kind of a cheat because it's a 3-part episode, is the one where Kang the Conqueror comes in and basically says hey, I conquered the Earth, but for some reason Captain America's existence fucks up the future, so I have to come back and kill him. So I really enjoyed the whole 3-parter dealing with that, and then all that kind of leads up into something that goes into season 2, which I guess we can talk about another day. But I like this show because it gives you kind of a very rudimentary, basic introduction to the weird world of Marvel. Because it introduces a lot of things about Black Panthers, Wakanda, and all that stuff. Hawkeye's featured pretty predominantly, and I honestly think he might be my favorite character in the show because he's a snarky bitch. Yeah.
I like Thor and Hulk a lot. They were fun. But like I was saying, they have a lot of bad guys that don't appear too often, that not a lot of people know, like the Wrecking Crew. There's Mandrill, Griffin, a lot of these bad guys. Then there's a lot of stupid nods, like there was a cab driver reading a newspaper and it had Punisher on it, and he was never in the series, but there's a little thing that says Punisher on it. And then even though they had this and it was pretty recent as far as that show goes, they had Wolverine in the Howling Commandos as his original persona.
Right.
And different stuff like that was fun. And then Robin was there as Bucky.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually kind of funny that I was I was trying to watch this show, and obviously we went and saw Infinity War over the weekend, but I was telling Melanie that she only knows Bucky as Cap's best friend, as they have him in the movies, but I was like, no, he's pretty much his teenage sidekick. He's basically Robin. But then I was rewatching this and he's like, oh, he has the same voice actor. He's got Scott Menville from Teen Titans, so I thought that was funny.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's kind of a nice thing about this show, is that they technically don't have restrictions on what characters they can use and what things they can reference. Because pretty much straight up front, they tell you, oh yeah, the Fantastic Four is a thing, and Tony talks to Reed Richards off screen a lot apparently. I think in the second season you do get episode with them, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I do think that there might be a little bit of restrictions at that.
yeah, I think because there's a lot of characters that get like a little bit of an introduction in the second season. So I mean, you're kind of restricted to the Avenger characters for the first season. But like you were saying, like the Punisher gets a background notice. There's X-Men.
Well, they say a line where they're like, "Oh yeah, he's not working out because he's a mutant," and they're like, "Yeah, let someone else worry about that."
Right. And you were saying about the newspapers. I caught one of the newspapers. One that someone was reading in the background. It was talking about a school for mutants, and I'm like, that's funny.
Yeah, there's little dumb jokes like that, but I think a lot of the stuff has to deal with movie synergy, and that kind of plays into why the show got canceled and why it became something else.
Yeah, so my understanding of why this show got canceled, and the show only got 2 seasons. My understanding of why this show got canceled is it wasn't because Spectacular Spider-Man got canceled because Marvel got the TV rights back to Spider-Man, so they couldn't make that show anymore legally. But like the reason that Earth's Mightiest Heroes got canceled, my understanding of it is that they were running Ultimate Spider-Man alongside this, and they're like, okay, we want an Avengers show that's stylistically in line with Ultimate Spider-Man, so they canceled Earth's Mightiest Heroes and gave us this super generic looking Avengers show I think it's still running right now. I could say I've watched it and I don't care for it personally. That one is very much like in line with the movies.
It's very limited animation.
It's limited animation. The costumes are very modeled on the movie. The team lineup is pretty much the movie lineup. I mean, it goes with the Guardians of the Galaxy cartoon that's going on right now. That also, I think, is in line with all of those shows.
I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah, but no, this show was, Earth's Mightiest Heroes was great. I still go back and watch it periodically, and it's still great every single time. It's got a lot of good stories that, involving a lot of different aspects of the Marvel Universe. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of episodes that deal with Hydra, and, because Black Widow is working undercover in Hydra, and Hawkeye doesn't know that, so he's being a dick about it. So I like those episodes that deal with that. And then you got like the groups like AIM with MODOK and all them are showing up, and like you were saying, Kyle, there's a lot of bad guys in this, and there's a lot of obscure ones that I had zero knowledge about.
I think my favorite cameo in here was the Space Kook was in here.
The Space Kook from Scooby-Doo?
Yeah. He was in the jail. I don't know, that's someone, I don't fucking know who it is. I had to Google a lot of the people that were in the jail.
Yeah. There's a lot of like obscure ones. Like a lot of them they don't reference by name, but they're just in the background. If you know who they are, then good for you, and I'm sure you got a chuckle out of that reference. And that's kind of something I was thinking about watching this. It's like when it comes to DC, I can at least name a couple villains off for most of the main DC heroes, but outside of like Spider-Man, I don't really know any of the heroes like bad guys. Like I really couldn't tell you who the enemies of the Hulk were or who Thor's bad guys are outside of Loki.
Loki,
Iron
Enchantress.
Man. Yeah, like I didn't know who Enchantress was before this. I didn't know who the leader was. And that whole 2-part where the leader turns the whole world into gamma monsters, that was a good 2-parter there.
I would say that would be a reason why I don't like the movie so much.
Yeah, because this show is still leans very heavily into comic booky weirdness. It's not trying to ground the show in any kind of reality. It's like, no, this is a world where superheroes exist. We just accept that Thor is a god, and it's actual magic, not science magic, like they explain it away in the movies. So there's that, but you're still getting, a lot of the main villains, like the Red Skull is in here for a hot second. There's a whole couple of episodes that deal with Ultron, which it was kind of weird watching, the movie that deals with Ultron, and they gave him like a really sassy personality, but in this one he's very much a robot with like zero personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still interesting.
Why don't you talk about the main reason why you wanted to review this?
Because I like this show?
No.
Why? Do enlighten me.
Because your waifu's in it?
Oh, for God's sake. Okay, fine. Yes, Colleen O'Shaughnessy is the Wasp in this, and, she does a very good job. And honestly, that's the thing. Like, I really like all the voice choices they got for this show. I think the guy they got for Iron Man, I think they were trying to get someone tonalistic, I don't know, similar to Robert Downey Jr. But if you're like a fan of the Marvel vs. Capcom games, I think most, if not all of the Marvel characters are basically taken from this show. So like Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, all of them, all their voices for that game were the same actors for this show. I don't know how many of them got carried over to Infinite, because I never played that one. But I think it shows that like how good these actors were at playing these characters, that they crossed them over into a video game that has nothing to do with the show.
Do you think Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was pretty shitty?
I'm never really good at those games, so me saying whether a fighting game is good or bad, it's hard for me to assess. Because I'm not great at them to begin with. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I think there's plenty to like about this. If you're a fan of Marvel, then you probably watched this show, but if you haven't, I think you should definitely check this out. Oh, and I did find something else out while I was rewatching this. The guy, what's his name? Ciro Neely was one of the developers on this show, and I think he was like the head guy heading up the most recent Ninja Turtles show. So that's a cool little bit of trivia there for you kids.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's also a good show. And then they're canceling it for some weird 3D looking show, or some 2D show. I don't know how I feel about that one, Kyle.
It's either gonna work or it's not.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Gotta wait to see. But, yeah. I really dig this show. I think I really wish it would have kept going. But, Dem's politics, I guess.
That's synergy for you.
Synergy's a bitch. Yeah, there's plenty of episodes. I don't know if they're drawing on specific comic storylines, but do feel like they're very much comic book inspired. The art style is very graphic in the way the characters are designed, and I think that's what appeals to both Kyle and I here, is that it's not like overly complicated designs. There's a lot of the character designs kind of flow, I guess is what I'm is a word I could use.
I guess.
I don't know. Kyle, what do you want to say about this show?
It was a good show.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's all we can say. It was a good show, and you should give it a chance if you haven't given it one yet.
The new one, not so much.
Not so much. I think if you're going to watch an Avengers TV show, don't watch the one from the early 2000s and don't watch the one that's going on right now. Watch this one. Because this one you'll have a good time with. I guarantee it.
Or the one from the early 90s.
Was there one before?
Oh my god.
I know the one that had Vision and Scarlet Witch and Falcon as like the main characters. That was like from the late 90s, early 2000s or something.
Yes, that one.
Yes, well I was saying don't watch that one. We're very tired. Well, guys, Kyle, unless there's anything else you want to say to the lovely people.
I sure don't.
Oh. Kyle loves you all, people.
That's
Make no mistake
debatable.
about that. Oh, alright. Well, that does it for the Ink and Paint Club podcast this week. We'll disassemble, as the Avengers would say, for this week. And then next week, we'll come back with something, fun, hopefully.
Nah.
No? Okay. We'll just, the same old, same old.
There you go.
Alright, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ink and Paint Club podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can catch a new episode every week. Also be sure to follow us on our Facebook and Twitter so you can keep up with the show. Links are in the description. We'll see you next week.